Mine heritage and powering mine. There's a light inside us always.
So how can we influence? If we have said we can check our ego, check our fears, have a lot to do with listening, then what are some of the things that we need to pattern up to have our communication to influence? The first is, one, we talked about attention as the first. How do you build attention? To get people's attention, one, you can start with a story, you can start with an analogy, you can start with a metaphor, you can start with statistics. Now, those are things that get our attention, whether you want it or not. Because the first thing you want is to grab somebody's attention. But the most importantly is when you start with your own personal story. Because most of us relate at a personal level. And some of these stories are stories maybe we have heard or we have gone through. So you're listening, you're trying to check, you're like, how's it going to end? How's it going to end? How's it going to end? The second is that you need to ask questions. You diagnose. When you presume you know, you do not know. They said the best learners are the most curious learners. And curiosity starts with questioning. And as you question, you're not questioning to criticize, to contribute, but you're questioning to connect. You said, by the way, that when you see dogs, you run away. Why? Why
cockroaches? You said
cockroaches.
Yes, I was about to run.
Yes. So why? What comes into your head when you hear about cockroaches? What happened? So somebody starts to check. They want to get to know exactly. So you need to question. Questioning is quite important. Whenever you think you know, actually you don't know. So you don't have to presume that whatever they're saying is absolutely true. Some things may not relate with you. But how do you know that something does not relate if you're not questioning it? And there's a time when we just question for the sake of questioning. You need to question to understand. Or you question trying to connect. Because when you question connecting, it helps the other person understand what you've not understood so they can come back to correct you. Then the other is pauses.
a question connecting or relating.
You ask a question to connect and relate. The other is to pause. When I started these public talks, I had fear in me. Well, everybody has. And for me, the thing that used to help me was every time I went in front of an audience, I would first look at them, keep quiet and look at them. But within me, I'm just asking myself, all these people have come to listen to me. So now I'm crediting myself and giving myself confidence. Or when I'm talking and I lose track, I keep quiet. Then I recall myself. At times even, pauses can help you when you notice people are not following you. Because they're in a loop, they're hearing your voice. When you keep quiet, they'll think you're finished. Now when they come back, you're like, you proceed. Look at our voices, or our communication, or our words. They're spaces. That's why people put in the highs and lows, or others speak very fast. Our body language speaks a lot. And when it comes to communication, your body language will tell. Oftentimes I've seen now His Excellency of late, he moves and he keeps putting his hands together. Like, this is a leadership gesture. That psychologically they know now all your brain is connected, you're using your left and right, blah blah blah. It's like more or less of crossing legs. You know? You go on a panel, you say everybody wants to cross legs. But we don't know the psychology behind. It's because you're using now your left and right brain. So you're more comfortable. You can relocate or reallocate your information that you have. Then even the posture itself gives you this feeling that, hey, I'm here. You know what you're saying. So your body language has to be checked and really means a lot. All right. Now let's go to one of the others. We have in communication what we call the 3 aims. If you want to influence, these have to be inclusive. The first is your message. When we are crafting a message to communicate, we go back and craft a message that will relate. Because if your message is not relating, you lose the message. Christ normally said the kingdom of heaven. That was his message. And people are like, Someone going to ask, but you keep saying kingdom, how does it look like? Where is it? Blah, blah, blah. Message. What is the message? Now, when you get the message, you tailor make your communication around the message. So you need to first get to know your message before even you start clustering it to say, I'm going to start with an attention grabbing or a metaphor, a story, or blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go to interest. I'm going to create the desire. I'm going to provide a solution. I'm going to close with a call of action. What is the message? First. Because when you get the message, now it's easy for you to craft, to go into those patterns. The second, now that you have the message, the second is meaning. What meaning does that message bring to us? The Kenyans were saying, Muzungu arudi Ulaya, Mwafrika apate uhuru. What was the message? Freedom. So how do you get freedom? We have to chase away the white man first. Our own Nyerere who said, you know what? Africa has to unite and become one. That was his message. That's what he saw. Now he was asking himself, why are we having borders? Why is it when I'm traveling here, I need a currency to exchange? Why can't we be one? So your message has to provide meaning. Are people going to relate with it? Because if it loses meaning, then they won't. Then your message will pass like any other message. And finally, the third is memory. It has to be memorable. They say 75% of our communication is lost in translation. 75 is lost in translation. And whenever something loses translation, it's not memorable. So how do you create a memorable message? It starts with the message itself, then the meaning. The memory is normally put in stories. And the underscore of memory is the feeling. It takes us back to empathy and emotional intelligence. We'll forget whatever you have said, but we can never forget how you made us feel. That is the memory. That message. I will forget what you told me, but I'll never forget how you made me feel. We can watch a movie, not so? And somebody may come and join in halfway. And when, like, you watch it like for 3 minutes, but for us, in that movie, maybe something happens and we all start crying. And this person there, what's up, guys? Why are you crying? Not so. For you, you're crying because your emotions have been patterning up, filling up. Now, this person has just come, doesn't know where it started and how it's going to end. So there is no experience and there is no emotion. So they cannot understand how you understand, because now for you, you have felt it. Okay. So whenever you feel something, whenever you experience something, you can never forget it. All you need is just a trigger. Now, we have the gang of the 3. This is the last thing for today. Now we'll have the inner assignments, practical. We have Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. Those are the men in those years of 400 BC who actually influenced our communication today. They say that for us to be able to communicate, regardless, like more or less of everything I've said, we need only 3 things. You've heard of the word ethos, pathos, and the other is logos. You've heard of this? Okay. You've heard of ethos? Ethos is when you dig deeper, when somebody says you're enthusiastic, right? What is being enthusiastic? It gives us this word. Its generic word is ethos, which simply means burning from within. Like you have this inner desire that is burning you, that everybody will be like, this guy is very enthusiastic in what they are doing. So ethos simply means credibility. You have the inner desire and you have mastered your things. And when people listen, they listen. That's why people start with their titles, because they want to create credibility. That's why people will first read your biography. They'll be, hey, you know what, this is Bruce Asimwe, he has worked with you, he has worked here, he has published, blah, blah, blah. What are they doing? Credibility. So when you start to speak, people are like, oh, there is no doubt, you're not trying to criticize, you're being taken on a ride. And most of the people that have this entheos are the people who have understood that you break the most complicated principle and break it down for a 7-year-old to understand. And that's what I think Einstein said, if you know anything and you can't explain it to a 7-year-old, you don't know it at all. So with your experience and knowledge, if you can't break it down, you won't be credible. You'll come with your good English, your good statistics and blah, 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 but people will be like, what is he talking about? So there should be entheos. The second is pathos. Pathos are emotions. Because remember we said that the emotions are the ones that make the message memorable. So you need to attach. It's like a puzzle. You need to know which one to fit to get it right. Which one to fit. The biggest challenge we face as communicators, we think that we are like stones. We're not malleable. I have spent nights practicing this speech. That's the speech I have to deliver. Even when you see people are dozing, they're not understanding, they're not hearing, you're like, I have to stick on my script. We lose sight. Because you have to relate with the people. So you have to change. When you notice it is not working, are you flexible enough to change the script? But stay with the same message. Then we go to logos. Logos are just logic. Make sure the message makes sense. It's more or less of if you're a cook, the salt has to be balanced with the ingredients. If you mess on one, the whole sauce will go back. And at times you can use statistics, you can relate, you can ask questions. You've had people who are talking, they're like, what do you think? Imagine, that's what they're doing. Logos, trying to create or make whatever they're communicating meaningful to you.
Empowering mind.